my mom took me to a musical, Fiddler on the Roof. I was very little. And it dawned on me that like you could play pretend like kids do, and people would watch. I was like, this is very strange. This is okay.
Kristen Maldonado here, and welcome to another episode of Pop Culture Planet, where we cover the world of entertainment while also shining a light on representation and inclusion. This week, we're joined by the very talented Jordan Donica, best known for his work on CW's Charmed, and currently starring in Broadway's Phantom of the Opera. We had a great conversation about breaking barriers in musical theater, developing characters, and working on the set of a magical show. Enjoy the conversation. You do it all, right? So like, where did you first find your love of entertainment? Did you always grow up kind of, dreaming of performing, whether it be on stage or on screen?
It came in stages. I can remember like the markers of it all. A lot of it happened before I was 8 years old. And yeah, I lived down in Tennessee at the time with my mom and my sister, and went to school just south of Nashville in a what was then a small little town. I always had a natural inclination for music and memory. It's like the way that melodies work, even when people are speaking. If they have a pleasant tone, something that vibrates inside of me, then it's easy for me to remember. And so I remember being in a music class as like a little kid, probably like first grade, second grade. And I remember the girl who sat next to me, her name is Laura Mahan. Shout out to Laura Mahan if you're out there. But yeah, she like raised her hand and told the teacher, because we were practicing like a Thanksgiving show, and there was a solo, and I would always sing the solo just to keep the time with the music, but sing it like to myself. And she raised her hand and told the teacher that I knew the solo and volunteered me to audition, but I was too shy. And so I sang the solo at the corner of the wall. And then they made it a duet, and that was like my first like stage experience. And then as I started to observe, I like to just observe things, and I realized my mom took me to a musical, Fiddler on the Roof. I was very little. And it dawned on me that like you could play pretend like kids do, and people would watch. I was like, this is very strange. This is okay, this is interesting. I was as interested in that idea as I was in the thing itself. And then it just became something to do, like playing sports. And then I saw Phantom of the Opera when I was like 8, 9. And I was very affected by just the voice of the Phantom before you even see him. And I felt like I could see this energy over the audience. And I leaned over to my cousin. I was like, I'm going to do that one day. So then, yeah, everything else was just kind of setting up the dominoes to push them all down later in life.
I love that you literally like manifested your future being in Phantom of the Opera.
I try to tell people it's not that I like manifested it. I just saw what I wanted. And then I was lucky enough to have a family who didn't say no, who would allow me the space to explore what I wanted to explore in the same way that I was exploring other avenues in life as well. And that's how I got to where I am, really, because of them.
So your family, were any of them in kind of like entertainment as well, or into music or anything like that? Or you just they just believed in you?
No, just appreciators of the arts, like lovers of all things really in life. My granddad was an educator. My grandma has a very entrepreneurial type of spirit, very free, very smart. My papa, who is my mom's stepdad, very calm, very stoic, very one of the best leaders I've ever seen in my life. Knows exactly what to say and what not to say, like all the things, and just practitioners of life. My mom did what she loved to do. My auntie did what she loved to do. My other auntie did what she loved to do. And they raised us all to pursue the things that we love. My sister included. She just graduated with her RN, and that's what she's always wanted with her life. And yeah, so I think just because of that and because of the willingness to support those things that you love, that's how I ended up here. But they also like would go to, my mom loves musicals. Um, my aunt loves music. You know, everyone in my family appreciates the arts. But yeah, that's really it.
Going off of that, the Phantom of the Opera, like then you basically made history as like the first Black Raoul to play that role. And I know you're back again, which is
Yeah, yeah.
incredible. I unfortunately missed you guys at in Into the Woods at City Center, and I was like, I
Mm.
got tickets for the Broadway one, and I was like, oh man, come on, Jordan. And then I was like, oh, he's busy. He's doing other things.
Yeah, I had already committed to doing Phantom before, so I felt like I needed to see that through, and I wanted to see it through. And it's awesome that Into the Woods got to transfer. Like, had no idea that that was even a possibility,
Mhm.
but that's beautiful because it means the show and story get to live on, and people get to work, and audiences, more people get the opportunity to share in that experience. And that was a really beautiful moment in time for me. And I'm thankful that I got to be a part of it. And shout out to Jason Forbach, who I'm actually working with at Phantom, because he covered me for the first week. He played the role of Rapunzel's prince because I was out with COVID. So shout out to him. I'm working with him right now again, and he's going to go and do the show. So that's what I love about this community, the Broadway community. You know, it's just one big support system.
Like I said, like you basically, changed the game when you played Raoul when you made your Broadway debut, and now you're back again. And
Mm-hmm.
again, like it's you and the other actress playing Christine, two incredible
Emily,
Black
yeah,
actors, playing these roles in ways that we have not, gotten a chance to see before. And so,
yeah.
what does that mean to you? And like, have you had struggles to kind of like break that boundary of like allowing to like getting to play roles that like stereotypically have maybe been done in certain ways that you're like, no, let's break the boundary there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's my whole life and has been my whole existence. So it's not something that I spend a lot of time thinking about because I already know that that's a reality. So the sooner I can accept that, the quicker I can get past it and over it into where I want to go. And again, that's not just like with theater, that's been with my life. So theater is easy. Theater is like fun. The entertainment business, like, ha, that's funny. Because just like with anything, a lot of people don't believe something until they see it. So um, all I ever ask is just, let me show you. Let me show you what I can do. And maybe you'll dig it, maybe you won't, because it's all subjective anyway. It's not like sport. There's nothing that you can actually measure. It's really just a feeling. So um, yeah, that's what I love about it. Um, Phantom being a part of that history the first time around with Allie, who was the first Asian American to play the role of Christine. Um, I was 22, so it was a much different experience. I was just kind of happy to be there and support her and her journey. And this time around, I feel like I'm supporting Emily in her journey as well. She's incredible, by the way. And Allie was incredible, by the way. And what it does, it just lets you see a different interpretation, but also something that you just haven't seen before. And what I love about it personally is delving into the historical side of our reality as human beings and learning, because most people also like would look at something like this and call it like a Bridgerton or something like that. And I look at it more intentionally than that, because I am kind of the belief that everybody has been everywhere always. We just don't get to hear all those stories for many reasons that we all can discuss, and that's a whole other topic. So the first time around that of doing this piece, Phantom, I never imagined that I would play Rao. So I needed to make myself believe that I could play Rao. And so in my research, I found a ton of information about this guy, Thomas Alexander Dumas, who is the father of Alexander Dumas, who to this day is the highest ranking general, I believe, in the French Navy or Army of African descent. And that was in the exact time that Phantom of the Opera was happening. Of course, Alexander Dumas is a famous author who wrote The Three Musketeers and Count of Monte Cristo, all stories about wrongfully imprisoned men, and he is of African descent. These are things that we don't really learn about. So then when you go into a show like Phantom, where, you know, it takes place in that same time period, it's fun for me when people want to like make it, it is beautiful that we get to see it now, but I take it as a learning experience of look at where we were then too, and how can we build from then and from now and make something greater, because it's not just people like me, you know, it's not just Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. We're all representing each other in my book. Because after I left, Rodney Ingram came in, and he was the first Mexican American to play the role. And, you know, I take great responsibility in those things. And that's why what we do means a lot to me. So I take great pride in it.
Absolutely. I mean, it really, I can't even tell you like how much, even just like since the pandemic with like Broadway returning, like seeing these things has like even impacted me, just like watching them and being like, oh wow, like, you know, the Legally Blondes that they're doing at the Mooney and in
Yeah.
London now, it's like, you know, we don't have to cast the same person just because that's how it's been forever. Like there's so many other people in the world, and like if it's not like specific to that role, like who cares who plays it as long as they can do it and bring their authentic, you know, voice into it. And that's really
Amen.
empowering.
Amen. I got to give a shout out to the community that I grew up doing theater in back in Indianapolis, not like in the whole surrounding area, because that's the philosophy of community theater. Who's the best in here for this role, regardless of how they look, what they like, how tall they are, how short they are, how young they are, how old they are, how big they are, how, you know, whatever. And that's the kind of mindset that I carry with me in this business. And it's interesting at a certain level where that goes away and the idea of why that goes away. And, you know, I think we're all slowly chipping away at that. And that feels good.
Let's switch gears a little bit, get into a little Charmed.
Cool.
Now, this has been your first like recurring, like, you know, like main role on a TV series, correct?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was that process like, kind of coming into the show, especially coming in like in a second season? You know, what was that all like?
I was kind of at like the worst point of my life personally at the time. So it came at a time that was really interesting. And it came, you know, just before the pandemic. I had just lost my aunt who helped raise me. And the same day I lost her, I had my appendix burst, like within at the while it was happening. So it was a lot of intense things. And then after I was healed, I went out to LA and was staying with some friends and just auditioning. And yeah, and then I came up to the show, and I was honestly just happy to be there to learn, because I had done a couple guest stars back in New York and then one in LA, and I was looking forward to learning and having time to like be a human being, because that's a big difference on Broadway. You're working 6 days a week, 8 shows a week, and you're always just trying to recover. You have to work a lot of weeks to earn just 1 week off. But in TV and film, you get like Saturdays and Sundays off. So I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm going to have so much time. I'm going to have my evenings free most of the time. This will be an interesting experience. And what that allowed me to do was really take in information all the time. Because, you know, I had to trust the people that hired me. I had to trust the people who were graciously allowing me onto their show that they had spent a whole year plus creating. So I really just absorbed everyone's experiences and everyone's knowledge of not just Charmed, but their time in the business. And I learned a lot from cast, from crew, from directors, producers. It was that was why I was excited to do it. And I had never been to Canada before, so that was pretty dope. That was really dope.
Right? I feel like Canada is like peak, like making incredible TV and movies. I don't know I've never even been to Canada, but they just always have like such great like production.
Yeah, I had no idea until I went up there about everything that goes on in Vancouver and Toronto and Montreal and it was pretty amazing. Like it was surreal. I remember talking to my sister at one point, being like, I'm pretty sure I just saw Jason Momoa in this hotel, and you know, it's a different world. But having come from doing Hamilton before that, I felt comfortable in that world. You know, I didn't feel like I was out of my element at all. But I did know what I didn't know, and sought out that knowledge.
That's awesome. And so what was your audition like? Did you know like exactly what you were going in for?
Yeah, so actually the first time I got the sides, I said no because I really liked them. I knew it was Charmed. I loved the sides, but I actually thought they needed to cast someone who wasn't as light skinned as me. So just because of what the scene was. And so they were like, no, like you can change the words. And I didn't want to change the words because I'm not that kind of actor. I can be, but if you give me that permission, I will. And so what I didn't want to do though was change the meaning of the scene, because the scene was beautiful and actually very important. And so I just changed a single word to not change the meaning, but to make it so that I could inhabit the role. It was already named Jordan, by the way. So yeah, I mean, I I learned the sides that night, and then I went in the next morning. I was working on another project with my friend Matheny at the time, so I I had that on the brain as well, so I was very relaxed. I also felt like I understood who the character was because my nephew's dad was in the army. Served 3 tours, I believed, and that was around the time that I was in his life. So I was just kind of drawing on my memories from him and who he was, and mixed in with who I thought this character could be and what he was. And yeah, I just had fun and did the audition in a room and left, threw away the sides, and then got a call to have a screen test. And I went in, and it was with Liz and Craig, and I feel like there was a couple other people there, and Sarah was there, Sarah Jeffrey. And yeah, we read the same scenes. Yeah, and that was basically it. We had like a moment in the room, and yeah, and then they realized that I was in Hamilton, and they couldn't. I think that was honestly like it to my benefit, because I played such a different person in well, 2 different people in Hamilton, and they had seen that, and so I think they were just excited at whatever possibilities they could do with that. And then yeah, I got to the show, and I learned a lot about that process too. Like, you're auditioning, and then like really it's, you know, it's just character building, and they're hoping they know what they want to do with you, but sometimes they don't. So you're just kind of there to be just like a team. You're there to be used at their disposal when they know what they want, and how they want to execute that. So it was a very cool experience, all very fast. I got the call probably like within a week of that audition, that I was going to be going up to Canada. So I had to be fast and furious. And yeah, I was fast and furious.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And I mean, yeah, I mean, clearly they took some of those Hamilton skills. We got to see you perform a couple of times over the course of the seasons.
Yeah. I always feel weird about that, because I want it to be as practical as possible, because I love the art form, and and unless the style of whatever we're doing lends itself to it, like I think there's a lot of cool ways to do musical episodes, particularly as it relates to Charmed. Mm-hmm. But my problem with musical episodes is that they can quickly turn to cheese. And so I always wanted to make sure that if we were doing something musical, or I was doing something musical, that it made sense for what we were trying to do.
I think they nailed it. I mean, we had some
I think
fun karaoke moments.
Yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Yeah, what was that like duetting with Sarah?
I love singing. Singing is I always call it my first language. So it was a lot of fun. And to see her like break out, well, at least in terms of what our relationship was at the time, to see her have fun and like break out and sing, like, because we sang on set live. We did a recording in the booth, but like on the day we did it live, and she was awesome, and it was just a fun time.
And then unfortunately the funeral scene, but you still killed it
Yeah,
there as well.
my pipe dream was to sing with Kapil, who played Dev, but he was busy. So, but I was like, oh, you know, it would be cool is if we sang with each other from the other side, because we've been doing this whole Veil storyline. I loved this season, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, but he was busy. So I was like, oh man, I kind of did everything in my power, which is in my nature, to like surround myself with other people that I thought were also very talented. And they were like, no, we just want you to play the piano and do it. I was like, okay. So that was fun.
You mentioned you love this season, and I'm curious because I think everyone is pretty aware that like over the course of the seasons things have changed, new showrunners have come in. What was that like for you guys? And again, for this new season, I feel like you guys really went out with a bang. Like there was so many great moments. So what was that like for this final season?
It was interesting. Again, like everything is a learning experience, for me at least, and I think all of us as human beings. So Lucy brought like a different energy that was very infectious, and she was a great leader on set. It was hard. I'll speak before we get to that. Like it was hard for me personally because I was friends with Poppy and Madeline. We would eat ridiculous steak dinners, and I would do cold dips with Poppy on the weekend. And I just really enjoyed them as human beings. I also enjoyed Jason and JJ as human beings, and Maria. Like we all have hung out outside of work, because luckily, like, Vancouver's such a beautiful place. There's a ton to do. So play street ball with Octavio, Melanie's husband, and so losing two friends was hard, but I gained another in Lucy, and she's awesome. She's really has like such a bright light and such a spirit that allows a freedom for other people, which is really cool to see. And then working with Jeff and Nikki and Joey this season, who had been on the writing team, so it didn't feel like there was too big of a transition in terms of filling in the gaps. There was no real gaps to fill in. It was just really about getting on pages of who do we all think these characters are, where are we trying to go. What I liked about this season, and I said this to them the most, was that we were able to make a season and then release it. We were not making a season that like there weren't people watching Twitter and then making adjustments to whatever story they had already come up in their mind. I'm of the philosophy that if you have a story to tell it, and then let people decide what it is later. And so that's what I loved about this particular season, was that we got to tell, and they got to tell, whatever charmed story they wanted to tell this season in its full scope, without that kind of outside noise. And so it made
seasons,
like, yeah,
while it's airing, and
we're like still filming while we're like half of the episodes we filmed are out now, and it's cool. And I know that is the way of television and network television in a lot of ways. I think the medium obviously is changing rapidly, and so that's why this season felt different in that way. We got to really delve in and not worry about that, and I think it helped, honestly.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This was one of my favorite seasons. I feel like because they were able to just like tell the story, like there were awesome hints to things, like you could theorize, because like there were so many connections to things from the past, but like it's clear like they knew where everything was going. And I gotta say, like, you honestly, Jordan, your character has become like such a fan favorite. Like the journey your character has gone on. What was that like, having everybody, all these new magical beings coming back, or Chloe returning and kind of really putting the the spotlight on you as like that person, that character that like everyone can rely on.
I felt very blessed in that way, again, because Joey had been a part of season one as a writer as well. So I felt like it allowed me to get a little bit of the feeling of what season one was. Excuse me. By being introduced to that community in its wholeness, because Liz and Craig were so awesome about the type of character that Jordan was and who he was as a person. They allowed a lot of freedom in that, but also there was always open lines of dialogue and communication. And as I said, I'm kind of there. I'm there to support what's going on over here in the same way I'm at Phantom to support Emily and Allie and those who I'm working with. So I felt like, they threw a lot of different things at me because maybe there wasn't a lot of agreement on where the character should go or who he should be. And they trusted me to make it work. And so I did my best to just make it work. He's a just gone through a quarter life crisis, and now he has to try to figure out a new meaning to his life. And that takes time. And it takes trial and error. It takes trying things. It takes failing at things. It takes doing well at things, but it just takes trying. So I felt like that was a lot of who his character, that's what I found in that character of Jordan Chase. And what would you do if you got a new chance at life, and you were able to break a generational trauma that no one else in their family was able to break? And so that was always really fun to play. And then where he ended up in season 4 was a mystery. And, as writers do, I think everyone was hoping for a season 5. And so they were laying groundwork to go to other places for another season. But if it was a lot of fun to be a part of the magical community, albeit like limited in scope and ability, but not in experience. And that's kind of how I related the character to the Charmed Ones, because war is really an unimaginable thing unless you've been in it. So relating on the human side of things was how I was always able to remain connected to the danger that they were going through, because I felt like to a level the character understood it. And the more he got to see and be involved in this season, the more I think we got to see those similarities between the human world and the magical world, and how to try to diffuse situations, and how to use the team around you and all of their knowledge to save the day. So, so that was a lot of fun to be involved in those things. And it was also a lot of fun to have role reversals with Maggie, to be able to lean on her for a moment. It was really fun to explore that range of emotion, especially with Sarah, because she's such an excellent actress. It was nice I feel like you're only as good as your scene partners. So she helped me grow over these last 3 years exponentially, just because of the ability that she has.
I'm also curious for you, did you know you were going to become a white lighter, or like was that still kind of a mystery for you throughout the season?
I still don't think he is.
What do you think he is? What do you think's going on there?
We got to a certain point, unless you tell me, especially if I'm like the actor working for you, unless you explicitly are like, yeah, this is what you are, then I'm going to explore other opportunities. And so for me right now, he's just a healer, nothing more, nothing less. But, it was never stated to me when Liz and Craig did that last season. They really just wanted me to be able to continue on in the show, I guess. But they had no intention of calling it a white lighter or making him a white lighter. And then Nikki and Joey and Jeff same deal. Just like, he's not a white lighter. They were very explicit in saying that he's not a white lighter. So he's, always on the quest to figure that out and maybe if there was a season 5, then they would explain that, oh, he was, because sometimes people are like, no, don't worry about it. You don't need to play that, because they don't necessarily trust the actor not to play it. So, who knows? But I never saw him as a white lighter. I explicitly went away from that and just saw him as someone who could focus heal, similar to what he did in the Army. He's not a surgeon, but he can keep you alive on the battlefield long enough to get you to a place that can save you. So that's kind of how I viewed him this season.
I know there was a lot of mystery about that, and we were unsure.
Yeah.
But good to hear from you what your thought process was as you were playing the role. Over the course of the series, there's so much, back and forth when it comes to the love stories of can we be together? The struggle, there's so much going on in the world. Jordan and Maggie have a lot of that over the course of this season and kind of culminate in a really beautiful place after sort of realizing everything that they've dealt with and how, just important love is. So I'd love to hear about sort of that, final journey for you guys at the end of the season.
All I can really remember is when we were starting this season, I want to say it was episode 2. I remember Sarah we were filming the scene where Jordan and Maggie, I don't think it's breaking up, but it's just where they got in a bit of a tiff. And they leave it with a question, all right, when you decide, and there's no timestamp on that, there's no I need an answer by tomorrow. I need an answer by tonight. I need an answer in 15 minutes. It's when you decide, you let me know. In the meantime, I'll just be over here. And of course, she took that, later we find out, she's like, oh, we broke up. And I was like, no. I hit, all that stuff. But at the time we were filming that scene, I remember Sarah going, I hope there's a payoff for this. And Nikki was like, don't worry, there is. Because we had never seen Maggie and Jordan in that place. But I thought it was really good. It was good to see, healthy discussion, debate, people listening. How can you argue with someone without taking it to a place of that no argument ever needs to go? And then how do you have your experiences as individuals and respect that, and then come back together and share that and grow and become more whole, both as individuals and as a unit. And that was something that we didn't ever necessarily talk about, but that was what was fun to explore within it. And I thought the payoff was fun and beautiful and true to their characters.
I mean, we were all rooting for you.
Yeah, we were rooting for each other too. I wasn't expecting the relationship between Maggie and Jordan, to be quite honest, because again, you never know. You know what you know because of what you're told from the writers and what they want you to know, and then the rest is for you to just explore and inhabit and play, and then things can change and things can blossom. That's why I'm Jordan might be a white lighter, but as of right now, to me, he's not. But in the same way that Maggie and Jordan didn't really solidify entirely until this season, and that was, I think, very intentional on the writer's part. I was brought in and told that I'm not necessarily there to be in a relationship with her, but to be a friend, and that's always fun to play, because I don't think we see that enough in our day-to-day lives or in entertainment of, hey, can two people who are attracted to each other have a friendship? Can two people who aren't attracted to each other, who are opposites, whether that be male, female, or whatever you want to, however opposite you want to get, can people just be friends? Can people challenge each other and grow with each other? And from that, then love of all forms can blossom, and what you choose to do with that then takes form with each choice that you make. And that's how I approach their characters, in a very also Shakespearean, like Beatrice and Benedict type of way. Like, oh, I like you because you challenge me. Cool. That's interesting. That's interesting. And I felt like that was very much the case for both of their characters, which is what drew them together in the first place, in my
Mm-hmm.
in my brain. But it was really fun to play that, and like I said, to work with an actress like Sarah who has that kind of range makes my job way easier and teaches me a lot as an actor. And it was fun to just listen and exist in those scenes and those moments with her.
Now I got to ask, I mean, 3 seasons. Do you have like a favorite moment or a favorite scene or a favorite memory of like just working on the show?
I love, and this is like probably going to be like against the grain, but like I love a lot of the things that most people don't. So like I love a good location day. There was a day in season 2 where we filmed at the asylum, where I got to play my great granddad or whatever, and Lawrence Mortimer Chase.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to snow that day. Had it not snowed that day, and it rarely snows in Vancouver like that, like we wouldn't have had that kind of set. And I thought it lended itself perfectly to the scene, but also I had so much fun. I felt like a kid playing dress up in the snow and just like literally falling and making snow angels and just having fun. And when you can feel like that and it's your job, yeah, I felt very lucky, and that was in season 2. But there were so many of those moments, you know. Doing ADR, I feel like that. I love doing ADR because it just feels like rehearsal, and you get to, like, again, like in theater, go back to the character and explore and inhabit and think deeper, and it's cool. It's cool. It's also a challenge, which I like. You know, how can I add this line in and make it sound like I'm not in a booth? It's a lot of fun. I like that. I remember I enjoyed reading every episode, and just seeing where the characters were going and what was happening to them. And I love a video store, so I love that whole that whole journey for Harry.
Absolutely. The Blockbuster, the infamous
Yeah.
video store.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I think I still have my Blockbuster card back in Indiana somewhere.
And now, obviously the stage, the screen, very kind of different. Do you have a different process for each? And I'm also curious because, like, obviously you're returning to the role in Phantom of the Opera. Like,
Hmm.
are you approaching it in like a different way, or how do you do that?
I had a teacher, um, coach, who would say it's the same process. It's the same. It's the same work. You're always doing the same work. And it's easy to like think that's not true, especially when you're young and you're like, no, but teach me, like, and the differences are just like the craft of it all, which is just the size. So I equate it, same thing when you're singing in a booth versus singing live. Um, the audience is the crew that's around you. Every day is basically a tech day, like a 10 out of 12 in theater. Um, and then your audience, your main audience is really just the camera. And the great directors that I worked with were able to like communicate those things in terms of like, yo, the performance is what it needs to be, but X, Y, and Z, to just tune it a little bit. And that just helps you become a better actor in general. And you really learn how to have the thought easier and trust that the thought is enough, and that whatever comes from that thought will be correct. I had another teacher who would say, as long as you've done the work before you get to the day, everything you do will be correct because it'll be the character. And I really had to learn to trust that because it's very true. And when you do, there's more freedom and there's more magic because there's more discovery. And ultimately, what the camera's trying to capture is the moments of discovery for every character. And in theater, what you have to learn is how do you have a moment of discovery when you're doing the same thing all the time. In film, it's a little easier because it naturally lends itself, or TV, I should say. I haven't done as many films, but you know, it's easier to lend yourself to the discovery of the moment, but you really have to let go afterwards. And that's always the hardest part of doing either television or theater, because at the end of the day, we're pretending to be other people. At least in my philosophy, there's many different philosophies going around these days about acting and what it should or shouldn't be. My philosophy, like, I'm playing someone else. I'm not me. There might be aspects of me within the character, but I'm in a totally different circumstance. Therefore, I am someone else. So reminding oneself of those things, and this is the craft aspect that links the two to me, is the most important part of what we do, so that you can come back to reality and be a decent human being. And that aspect is the same. And so, like, the work, the before and the after is the same. And the doing is maybe a little bit different because there's a camera there. But it's not much different.
When you're going back to a role, a couple of years later, like
Yes,
Phantom.
6 years.
Yeah.
That is, it's interesting. I actually asked a few of my friends who have done that or who are in process of doing that, what has that experience been like for you? And everyone says the same thing. It's always deeper. It's always different because you're different, right? Like, I'm 6 years older now than I was then. I'm closer to 30 than I am to 20, which was the opposite back then. So it's equidistant, exactly, actually. So it's an interesting exploration. There are things that feel much easier, much more calm, much more in control. And what I love about it is that it just affirms that both are correct. The 22-year-old Raul is the 22-year-old Raul, and the 28-year-old Raul is the 28-year-old Raul. And there are still similarities there. But because of the experiences that happen in between, just like with life, it's been a little easier to find the different Rauls within the piece. So, the guy who owns and runs and manages and provides money to the opera, the guy who maybe he also is in the Navy. Maybe he hasn't fought in a battle per se, but he serves. It's easier to find that guy and to play the guy who's completely smitten and would do anything for Christine, even if it's not exactly what she wants him to do for her, because that's the conflict of it all. So those things are maybe a little easier to find, and things I didn't necessarily think of before, but I still started from the same places. You just get to go way deeper, and that's the thrill of doing a show every day, the same thing every day, I should say. Is you just find the endless possibilities, because there are an infinite number of choices and reactions, and it just comes from listening and being in the moment. And that's been a thrill. And it's been a thrill to, I was saying the other day, to play the roles with different people, because there's already, in the week and a half that I've been back, I've done the show with 3 different Christines. So, like, that automatically changes your performance too. And I've done the show with 2 different Phantoms already this time around. And so it's fun to see who you become with other people. Yeah.
That's so fascinating because that's one of the things that I think is so great about theater is like, you know, if a movie comes out, people are like, that's the person. And then if they do a reboot, it's like, no, like it was this person. But like in theater, there are so many different people coming into play, so many different roles, and they bring so many different aspects to it that like it can completely change the show just to have one person that's like different playing that role and the way that they
Yeah.
kind of bring about that energy.
Yeah.
So yeah, you just confirmed exactly what I was thinking. Like it's so fascinating.
And a huge part of that too is what happens backstage. You know, like it's not just how you're performing on stage. It's how are you when the audience isn't watching, because that energy affects the group too, because we're all together. And that's the same in TV and film. You know, that's just leadership. And everybody can be a leader, and not just the person playing the lead. Like to me, everybody in that building is a leader. You know, and when you bring a respect to the people that you're working with, it just creates a better cohesion. And that's what I try to do with every project that I do. And so that informs then the trust on stage and the daringness on stage, because when you trust each other, you can dare and go a little further and try things that are new and let go a little more. And that's when it becomes fun.
You're coming back to this role after 6 years. Do you remember all those lines and all those songs from 6 years ago? You're like,
yeah,
refresher.
Once you do something, I think it kind of it lives within you and stays a part of you to a degree always, even when you know, shelve it. um you know, I haven't really thought of Charmed since we stopped filming, but having this conversation, every moment is so clear in my brain. So coming back to Phantom was very much the same. There was a couple lines, you know, that have changed and things like that. A little bit of blocking that's changed, but otherwise, I was able to learn the show pretty quickly. Um, Same with Into the Woods, because I had done Into the Woods back in college, and I hadn't played that role. I played Cinderella's prince, but I knew the show and I knew the ensemble numbers, and so I actually had I had an easier time coming back to it and finding it in the recesses of my brain. There were less dots to connect. So it just kind of, in the words of Mufasa in The Lion King, you know, he lives in you. Um, just like just like riding a bike, you know. So it's but what's interesting is then, you know, not you still can't be you still have to be active and proactive. You know, you can't just rely on the fact that I could sing this 6 years ago, so I'll be able to sing this now. You have to really, that's the craft of it all too, you know, navigate the days and navigate the shows, especially on 2 show days. You know, you might feel great in the first show, and then that second show is a little tougher. So you have to learn pace and all of those things, regardless of the show one is doing. That's the craft, and that's the hardest part, because you can study it, but the only way to learn it is to practice it, and it's tough. It's tough.
First of all, how long are you going to be in Phantom so I can make sure to get my ticket? And also, after Phantom, like, do you have things lined up, or do you have goals or plans or things that you want to just like do in the industry? I'd love to hear more about it.
I'm actually just filling in at Phantom for John Riddle, who's doing another show off Broadway. So I'm only there until July 31st.
Okay, so I got to make sure to get my ticket before then.
Yeah. And then I'm workshopping another show at the end of June that I've been working on the last 3 years. And that's going to happen sometime in the winter, and but not for a while. So I'm also working on, I direct and I teach as well. So I also do symphony shows, and I do like smaller venue shows. So I'm doing a show out in Chicago at Ravinia. I don't know if you know that venue, but it's a show I actually did last August with Stephen Reinecke and an amazing group of people: Matt Doyle, Montego Glover, Katie Rose Clark. We sang down at Houston. It was an Alan Menken show. We're doing the same show up in Ravinia this summer. August 19th, I believe is the date of that. And then I've been working on making a short film with the playwright who I went to university with. Her play is the first one I directed, first like feature length. We're making it into a short film right now, and that's been a fun and interesting process. And my goal is to have that done by the end of the year. And then yeah, I can't technically like talk about what the other project that I'm working on is, but it's another Broadway show, and yeah. But in the meantime, I'm also always auditioning, you know, always doing that thing, but just kind of enjoying my life right now and enjoying doing Phantom again, and being back around people I haven't been around in like 3 years. So it's been a beautiful time.
Basically, you're just really booked and busy.
Ah.
Yes, you're killing it, man. You're killing it. Thank you again to Jordan Donica for joining us on this episode of Pop Culture Planet. You can watch the video podcast at youtube.com/Kaymaldo. That's KAYMALDO. Listen to the audio version on your favorite podcast listening platforms, and just get even more insight at our news outlet, popcultureplanet.net. You can keep up with the podcast by following me at Kaymaldo or the show at Pop Cult Planet, pretty much everywhere on social media. You can also support the podcast with your very own Pop Culture Planet merch at teespring.com/stores/Kaymaldo or on patreon.com/Kaymaldo. If you enjoy the episodes, consider subscribing so you know when a new one is posted. Rate and review this podcast and share it with your fellow pop culture lovers. Thanks for listening. It's been a blast, and I'll catch you in the latest episode. Consider subscribing if you like my videos, and if you want to talk more TV and movies with me outside of the comments section, check out the exclusive Discord available on my Patreon at patreon.com/Kaymaldo. If you like this one, you can check out more of my videos right over here. See ya!